Hi there, and welcome to the Love or Leave the Law podcast with your hosts, Adam Ouellette and Casey Berman. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Love or Leave the Law podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Casey Berman. Casey, say hey.
Hey, everybody.
This is Adam Ouellette, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting topic. It's one near and dear to Casey's heart because he talks to people all the time through his practice, Leave Law Behind, about this very topic. And today is about the early signs you're on the way out of the law. We're going to touch on some points here that you need to be aware of. If you find yourself resonating with any of these points, then maybe it's time to talk to Casey and discuss your options. But regardless, even if you're somewhere in the middle where you're on the fence and you don't really hate the law, but you don't love it, these are things to be aware of, because the more you can understand some of the topics we're going to touch on today. We're going to talk about boredom and being depressed and not wanting to go to work and stuff like that. The more you can understand the psychology and the energeticness behind these topics, the more you can shift out of these types of problems. So, Casey, let me start by asking you about this top one that we're going to talk about boredom. What is wrong with being bored in your career?
Adam. I'm really happy we're covering it in this episode. And boredom isn't necessarily bad. I think nowadays, with our connected world, we're always trying to avoid boredom. You see people at the bus stop or wherever just on their phones. We always need to be doing something. So I do want to start off by saying that sometimes I want to be bored. I think it's great to be bored, to stare off and reflect and not be searching on your phone or not have to be doing something or getting FOMO, fear of missing out. So first off, I do want to say in general, I think boredom is a great thing. We need it in our life because when we get bored, it helps our mind think in different ways and do things that our fast-paced life otherwise doesn't let us do. But I do think that if you have too much boredom in something that's as important to you or takes up so much of your time as your job, what that can do can lead to depression. It can lead to a lack of self-worth. It can lead to a lot of the things that attorneys suffer with. And so the issue with boredom is when your job or what you're working on just really isn't challenging enough for you, where it's something that you're really just not interested in. I see this all the time, as many people know, and I'll just give a quick refresher at Leave Law Behind. What I work with are attorneys who are just at the point where they want to leave the law. For many reasons. But one of the main reasons we see is that they just don't care. And boredom comes a lot out of just not caring. There's not a connection to something. And so I always encourage people like IRAC, like we in law school, really to issue spot. And one thing where boredom comes from is the fact that we're not connected to something. We're not in alignment with our day-to-day job responsibilities. We're not in alignment or connected with our client or with what we're doing. We're just putting together Word documents. We're just copying and pasting. We're just doing the same case over and over. And granted, it's important to that particular client, but if we be a little bit selfish and in a positive way, for us, we're just doing the same you-know-what over and over again. And so while not every job's perfect, nothing's perfect in life, if it's just this consistent and overwhelming boredom in something that is so important to you as your job, that's going to lead to a disconnectedness. And when you don't have that connectedness to something, it sort of avalanches and waterfalls and all these other analogies that you want to use to a lot of other things: depression, stress, disconnectedness, lack of self-worth. I'm not worth anything, So that's really when you notice that there's this element of boredom, what you're really noticing is that you're just not, in many ways, you're just not connected to what you're doing from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, or as we know on Saturdays and Sundays, because attorneys work so much.
Yeah, I can tell you some stories from my own career as a lawyer. And I've talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to expand upon it today because this is part and parcel of what I had issues with in the law towards the end, and where I was like, well, I've had enough and I've satiated it. Like we've talked about in one of the previous issues, I use that word satiate, and that has a lot to do with being bored, right? I mean,
Yeah.
For me, it was early on, I was working on stuff that I really didn't like to work on. And as I became a partner with the guy that I had started with as an associate, And I started to be able to control my reality in terms of being a lawyer. I was his partner and I had a 50-50 say in everything. And I started to decide for myself what it is I wanted to work on every day. And then as he and I split after 10 years and for the past 8 or 9 years being out there totally in charge of my own life and clearly had a partner, but the fact is I was the one in charge.
Yeah.
I was exclusively doing what I really liked. But the thing is, I was teaching the same things over and over and over, and I was out talking about the same things over and over. And the reason for that is because there was a limited amount of things that I really liked doing in the law.
Yeah.
And even though I was doing those things like we talked about, Casey, do more of what you love, I just got to the point where it was enough. And
Yeah.
now with the career that I have unlimited potential in terms of teaching a multitude of topics. And Casey, you and I have talked about the fact that we're never going to run out of topics to talk about on this podcast just because there is that much to talk about. But as far as real estate law and what I was doing at the time, we had, I think, 50,000, 60,000 views on our YouTube channel, and I was teaching realtors about contract law, and I was out networking and doing all that stuff. And to a certain extent, I still love doing that, and I am still doing a lot of that, and even with the new work I'm doing. But I got to the point where it was like, I'm tired of teaching about contracts, and it was bored. I was bored. That's the bottom line. And so for me, it's like I wanted to look at something different and not in the law, because I had tried loads of things in the law, and I've talked to people that were young attorneys, and I asked them, well, is there any other parts of the law that you really could align with? But for me, 18 years, it was enough. I was bored. And so the practice to me wasn't challenging. It gotten to the point where it was easy to do what I was doing, and I need a challenge. And a lot of us are in that place where we need challenges. Don't you think?
And I no, without a doubt. And from my own personal experience, I had a job that so many attorneys aspire to. This was back from 2000 to 2004. I was in-house counsel of a software company here in San Francisco. We had the .com office and everything, and it was great. I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. There were other things I wanted to do there. This is right before I left law. This was kind of one of the first seminal threshold moments of my life in June and July of 2004, which we can get into more detail on another podcast. But I think the main issue for me really was I was doing the same thing over and over again, licensing agreements, negotiating, and it was great experience. I'm happy that I started it. I could still pick up and kind of do it today. Like, I get it. But after a while you go, okay, well, I'm bored, and I'm here at the end of the quarter and sales guys are looking at me and I'm trying to negotiate. And there came a point where there could have been one path where there was more room to develop, or there could have been other where the path where I went where there weren't, and that's why I left. And I think you see this in legal jobs as well as non-law jobs. There's so many people I know kind of outside of the law who are finding boredom in their own jobs. So, I tell people, once you leave, this is kind of a consistent refresh and reinvigoration that we all need to go through in life. But I think what's important, for our audience is that if you're seeing this boredom, if you're just not connecting, that this could be an opportunity for what you talk about, Adam, to find a way to love it again, to find new ways within the law, to find new practices, new people to work with, whatever it is, or to really start considering that, what, if I'm not really going to be able to find a connection or an alignment, that's enough for me, I should consider leaving.
Yeah, and I didn't consider leaving because I was bored. It was a factor in it. But part of the reason why I started to teach and get out and do more workshops and do that kind of stuff was because I was bored. I had done thousands and thousands of closings and done hundreds and hundreds of different loan documents for banks. And even though paralegals were working on a lot of it, it was still very similar stuff. And this is, I think, part of the problem with being a lawyer is that there isn't enough variety in the niche that you are in. And it doesn't matter what niche you're in. There isn't a lot of variety when you're an estate planning attorney, a family law attorney, litigator. A lot of it's the same thing over and over.
It's crazy, Adam, because when you think about it, when you go through career services, there's 2, maybe 3 jobs we learn about in law school: litigation and transaction.
Yeah.
maybe a third like in the government or policy or academia. I'll throw that out there. But really, there's two types of jobs: litigation and transaction. And then within that, all the sub areas. And so when I talk with people, it's crazy when I talk with people from leavelawbehind.com and they go, well, what else am I going to do? How can I transfer my skills? I'm so bored being a litigator, or I'm so stressed or whatever. And when I talk to them about all the jobs, the non-law alternative career jobs that are out there, content marketing, operations, trust and safety, customer support, on and on, compliant. I could go on. We'll save that for another time. When I think about all these jobs, they immediately, they don't say it, but their point is, whoa, first of all, I had no idea. And second of all, it's this realization, whether they know it or not, that there's all this exciting stuff out there that they didn't realize. And there's all these opportunities to not be bored in their jobs. And that's what's so exciting, is we really have these blinders on as attorneys that there is just so much out there. The problem is we don't know about it. And that's where Leave Law Behind comes in, where you come in. But there is just such another world out there. And I think with you, when you left, you've told me your story, it's inspired me, but you sort of created this on your own, where you leave the law and then you kind of get into kind of public speaking and life coaching, and then online marketing and email marketing and all the psychology behind marketing and how you build podcasts. Like, you've sort of found and found all these new jobs on your own. And I feel your energy, through the video chat. And so I think the big thing is, when you do realize that you're bored in what you're doing, one, really act on that. Really don't just shy away from it. Really realize that is a sign that your body and your mind and the universe is telling you to really take seriously. And I think two, really realize that you shouldn't be bored all the time in life. You should be excited about getting up in the morning and going to do your thing. That's not just something that you should poo-poo, but that real excitement in life. Granted, there's gonna be boring mornings. You're still gonna have to go to the DMV, et cetera, et cetera. But that excitement and a lack of boredom should be something that is really the majority, if not the super majority, in your life.
Yeah, I loved your post on your blog this week about your unique genius. And and if you guys haven't seen that video, you need to go to Casey's website and check for the unique genius. Where were you recording that?
In my home office.
In your home office, okay. But you're doing the one before that at what's
the one before I did, actually, we were at AT&T Park.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the one.
The Giant Stadium.
Yeah, but
that's 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
But the one on Unique Genius was interesting, because you talk about how you're using your unique genius now, and I'm using my unique genius with what we're doing, even with this podcast. But even when you're using your unique genius, you do have the considerations that some stuff will be boring. So don't take this topic that we're talking about. We're going to move on from boredom here, because I'm getting bored with the topic of boredom. But one of the things you can realize, and you started out with this, Casey, is that you will be bored sometimes in life. But the other thing about the world today is that some of us go through multiple careers because we get bored, until we find that one career that we absolutely love, that we probably will never get bored with. So don't hang your hat on the law or any other career. You may go through multiple iterations of different types of things until you find that very one thing that you absolutely love and can't live without. So, yeah.
And I know, Adam, you bring up a great point, and we'll jump to the next topic. I just want to take 30 seconds to close the loop on that. But that's a fantastic point, because one thing I do tell people I work with who leave law behind is, when you're looking to leave, there's a job coming up, an opportunity, you're doing informational interviews, you're interviewing and so on. You want to make a determination: is this the ideal, perfect job for me? Does it totally align with my unique genius? Nothing's total, but is it really like the one? Or is it more of a stepping stone? Is it 65% there and it's a stepping stone to something else, and I'm going to be here for a year and then I'm going to move on to something else? And both are great.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong, but it's more of just realizing what the dynamic, kind of being mindful, like, this is not the perfect job, but boy, it's a great stepping stone out.
Yeah.
And so the idea that, well, I'm going to work with Casey or listen to this podcast, or I'm going to go do something and I'm going to find the perfect job, not at all. And I think I wanted that. And I really realized that in 10 years, I don't even know what I'm going to be doing. You don't know what you're going to be doing.
Very true.
And I want to incarnate, reinvent myself, depending on the new technology, or really how I can add value to the world. So I do think it's very important to say that, it's a journey, and just really enjoy each of these steps. And for many people who are listening right now, if you're bored or depressed and so on and want to leave or change your practice, that's just where you are now.
That's
And
all.
it's just all incremental.
I
So
agree. It's totally aligned with everything we're talking about in terms of even if it's 65%, as long as it's better than where you were. And we will talk more about using your intuition, living from your heart space. And that is really where your power comes from to determine what is best for you. So,
and getting that momentum, as long as you
right.
feel that momentum moving
That's
forward,
right.
right?
And it is about momentum. It's about putting one step in front of the next.
That's right.
The old adage, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first. It's true. It's true. And
It
so if you
is.
feel stuck and you're bored with the law, it is about taking that first step towards a new life and something that you can
That's right.
really love, or taking that first step towards really loving the law. Don't stay where you are if you are bored. That's the key here.
That's
So
right.
let's move on to the next topic, which is one that is kind of depressing. Is depression. When you're there's nothing else other than when you're in a state of depression, especially around your career. What do you do with that, Casey? I mean, if
Yeah.
you don't feel good about your life as a lawyer, how do you work with that, and then how do you move past it? Are some of the tips that you have for people that might be feeling depressed listening to this?
Yeah. It's really hard. I have kind of suffered my own from anxiety, not from depression, but I've had people, I don't think, maybe slightly, I've had people around me who have. What I've really learned, first off, is that it's a real thing, right? Even though it doesn't show as sort of signs on your body, or it's not a cut or a broken arm or something, it is a real thing. It's a real effect on you. And, the first thing is to understand that it's real. And I know people may say, well, of course, I'm feeling bad, but there's such a stigma in society against it. And so to kind of disconnect from it and say, I'm suffering from something, right? That's really the first step. And I'm not a professional here, but having dealt from it in kind of my own layman's terms and just sort of in real life, through people who are close to me, and also through people through Leave Law Behind, really recognizing that it is a real thing and giving yourself credit that you are suffering from this is really the first step. And I think what that does is it helps you to stop fighting yourself. Unfortunately, our society still has that stigma, and it can be very negative, and we're supposed to sweep this stuff under the rug. And so to not do that, I would say is sort of the first step. The second step that I would say, not really step, but just a kind of thing to keep in mind, is that you're not alone, particularly with lawyers. Dan Lukasik, someone who's guest blogged, who I consider a friend. I've mentioned him before. He's in Buffalo, New York. He runs a phenomenal website, lawyerswithdepression.com. Again, that's lawyerswithdepression.com. He has tons of resources out there. Adam, I want to get him on the show and have him talk about this. I hope he's a recurring guest for us. And so he's done phenomenal work out there. And so I think the second thing to keep in mind is that you're not alone. There are those resources out there. And you're not alone also just as a person suffering from it, but also that it's something that we see in the industry. The statistics bear it out. Dan has a ton of resources there and studies that he's shown and actual real life stories about that. I think the third thing that I keep in mind is, kind of finding, what the cause is, like what's causing it. It could be chemical. It could be genetic. Those are things that a professional you want to look to.
Yeah, for sure.
You might want to go into medication or find other alternative ways to do it. Medication isn't always the way to go, but there's something that to find some sort of solution, because sometimes you don't want to get out of bed and all that. So focusing kind of specifically on the law, what I say is that when you do get the help, when you do realize that, when you are able to get a little bit of momentum, the idea really is to kind of focus on your emotions and understand. I'm hoping for people to see that so much that's out there. There is so much beyond the law. Because when you think about what causes depression, whether it's a lack of motivation, whether it's boredom, a lack of self-worth, whether it's a certain type of programming, when you see all of the alternative jobs that are out there, all the different ways to make money, when you see about all the different ways to add value and so on, I really firmly believe that when you see all of these different ways that you could live your life, that can be a great way to, if not totally eliminate the depression, to severely mitigate it, to get your mind moving elsewhere, to get you thinking in ways and emotions that aren't about depression. I mean, I'd much rather have you be angry and just excited about something than just sort of
Yeah.
depressed and wounded in that way, right? So those are a few of the things that I talk about with people I work with Leave Law Behind, and that a lot of really smart, caring people and resources in the world have sort of shared with me.
Well, I think on my end, I've not ever been per se depressed because of my job, but I can tell you that I've been saddened and angered and irritated and just threw my hands up a lot of times. But I think depression is a signal to us that something's wrong. It's like if there's a
Yeah,
pain in your body somewhere, you're going to find out the reason for why that pain is there. And so if you've got emotional pain that comes from being depressed, it's a signal to us. One, I think Casey's spot on. You need to maybe go find some professional help to talk through it, to start to uncover some of the reasons for it. But it is a signal that something isn't right in your life. And so if you are depressed, it's a sign to you that there's something on the other side that needs to be taken care of, and on the other side, I mean, there's something outside of the law that you really need to look at and to start to make your way out of the law. Because if you're in a state of depression, the problem that we have as a profession right now is that we have rampant drug abuse and alcoholism. We know this because the state bar associations are really struggling to figure out what to do with this problem, even local bar associations. And a lot of times the solutions are, let's make them do CLEs. What the hell is that going to do for make someone do a CLE about the issues around alcohol? If someone is delving into these things and drinking, they know that they're doing this. And
yeah,
part of the problem that I see with using alcohol or drugs or food, I was one to use food even as a child to cover up the feelings that I don't like to feel, is that it is not a solution. It isn't. So the reason we're doing this podcast is if you're in some trouble and you have some problems, is to help you to see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And so
yeah.
depression in my world, for people that I've talked to, and I've known lawyers that were depressed, it's a reason to start to get out. I mean,
That's right.
stop. Depression, if you study it, and I've studied it in small ways, and I'm not a psychologist, and I'm not a doctor, and we neither of us hold ourselves out to be, and we're just here to give you some practical advice on some issues. But depression, when you're in depression, it's a figure eight. You come down and you go up, and you come down and you go up, and you just keep going through these cycles, and it's not a good thing for anybody. Not for
Yeah,
you, for your family, for your children if you have them. Clearly not for your clients or your staff. You're making
yeah.
yourself miserable and everybody miserable. So I think it's a red flag to you to start to wake up and to get some help, talk it over, uncover the reasons for the depression. It may not be the law that's causing you to be depressed, but a lot of people are.
And if there's one thing, a lot of people could say, "Oh, thanks, Adam. Thanks, Casey. You're telling me I'm depressed. I already knew that." I think if there's one thing I'd like people to come away from this is that there many times, be it society or be it the laws, we're not supposed to admit we're depressed.
Yeah.
And a lot of lawyers are supposed to be the adult in the room. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to know it all. I hear so much. There's one client that I was talking with who said, I'm making so much money. I have a good job. I have a job that's full of stature. I'm a lawyer, so on and so forth. And people won't believe me. People will shun me if I say I'm depressed. Like, I'm not supposed to be depressed.
Yeah.
We as attorneys are not supposed to be depressed because we've got so much going for us. We've got a great job. And that, I think, is what holds so many people back from what everything you and I have talked about in the past 10 minutes, which is finding help, which is seeing what else, that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And they just soldier through, and they use something, alcohol or food or whatever it is, to mitigate the pain. But it keeps coming. And so I just want to encourage everybody that you're human. There's there's your ultimate self that you can attain. There's so much out there in the world, and if you're feeling depressed about it, like you said, Adam, it's a signal. And the other thing is that it's okay to admit it.
Yeah.
It's okay to say as a lawyer that you don't know everything. It's fine. It's
Well,
okay.
yeah, and on my perspective, when you look at society projecting on us and telling us that we have a great job and that we should be happy with what we're doing, it's a bunch of bullshit. Don't tell me what I should feel. And so I think that's the
That's
disconnect
right.
that most lawyers have is, well, why don't I feel good with this? Why don't I love being a lawyer? And that's because you may have been told you should be a lawyer and you didn't
That's
choose it
right.
for yourself, or you're staying in it because you think that you have to. And I think that's part of the problem and disconnect that we have as a profession. Society thinks that law school is a good idea, so loads of people go. Now, I think that is shifting, and it's changing from what I can see in terms of the numbers and the stuff being released from various bar associations and law schools and stuff like that. But don't feel that there's something wrong with you because you don't like the profession. There are loads of people. I mean, when we started this podcast, and we've got some people on our Facebook group now, and they're saying, man, I can't wait to be around other people that don't really like the profession. Well, there's going to be a lot of people come in that want to love the profession too, but there are so many people. I'm telling you, as I'm out talking to attorneys, the vast majority of them are saying to me, man, what is wrong with me? And I'm like, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing
There's
wrong.
something wrong with the profession that you chose. so
And
it's not you.
I think your point about a signal is great. And I talk about this. We're going to get into it again later as we talk more in depth about leaving. But one thing that I talk about with clients is to admit sometimes that law school was a mistake in going. And it's not supposed to make us feel bad. It's actually supposed to kind of relieve us of that weight. And I think that this is crazy. Run with me, everyone. But if you look at depression as that signal, if we were to kind of flip it in a productive way, I won't say positive, but in a productive way, what this is really telling you is what you just said, Adam, is here's an opportunity for you to unpack. Let's unpack all that's going on. Because I got this nice little box of me as an attorney and so on. If we unpack it, we look at everything that you just said. Why did I go to law school? Did I go because of society or because I saw it on TV or because of my parents? Why did I do all of this stuff? And it's really hard, but you find these answers to things that can give you the issue. Iraq again, right? Like the answer to the issue of, oh, so that's why I'm so depressed is because I'm doing something that I did for other people, or I'm doing something that I'm not connected with. I'm doing something I'm not good at, right? And so I really think, I love your idea about this being a signal. I'm going to use that because if you can get beyond the pain of it, or at least kind of put the pain over for a second and really look at what this is telling you, it's telling you to try and find answers or just raise more questions that can really kind of get to who your true self is and a new path that you can take.
Yeah, I like the idea that law school might have been a mistake for people, because when I look back at law school, I knew it was a mistake after the first year, but I was like, wait a minute, I already got student loans. I'm sitting there in the end of my first year going, holy shit, what did I get myself into? And
Same way, same
and
thing.
but I said, well, I'm here, and what am I going to do if I leave? And so I think a lot of us got to that point where you're in law school, and even when you graduate from law school, I'm sitting there studying for the bar, and I'm going, what in the F is this shit that I'm studying? Why is it that I'm not learning more about real life? And this is part and parcel of one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast, is to help teach people about real life, being a lawyer, and in the business aspects of it too, because we're not taught this stuff. But
Adam, I want to jump in. Don't forget your thought, but I will never forget. I keep a journal, and I remember in 1998, I think it was, I was in might have been 99, my last year before, I was in a criminal procedure class, and I just don't know what I'm doing. I don't like it. I'm bored. I am depressed.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget what I wrote to myself. My confidence is on fumes.
Yeah.
Is on fumes. Yep. I've been a very confident person. I've loved my life, growing up, high school and college. My confidence was on fumes.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget writing that.
I look back on law school, and I know it wasn't a mistake because I did it. and the way I look at the past is it's gone, and it's a stepping stone. Law school was a stepping stone for all of us. So don't feel bad about your choice. And I know this is not what Casey teaches, and we're going to end this episode here in a minute. We were expecting to get through a lot more, but there is a lot of poignant parts of this that are very important for you to think about. But I feel law school was a stepping stone so that I could get through it, learn how to do it, get to a point where I was an expert at what I did, and then look at using that knowledge. And this is exactly what Casey helps people with, using the knowledge of being a lawyer and having that law school and having the degree and having the bar association and passing the bar and all that. It is like nothing else that you can have. It's like when you look at doctors, if a doctor wants to go out and use that knowledge in other professions, it doesn't compare to the law school and the being a lawyer experience and the background in it. It doesn't compare because you have so much business acumen in terms of knowing the law. Now, not a lot of business acumen about running a business, but I'm talking about knowing the law in whatever aspect you have learned it and gotten to a point where you know it. Lawyers are very good technicians, let's put it that way, and they're not very good business people. They're very good at what they do in terms of practicing law. But I don't think it was a mistake for me, and I wouldn't be here teaching any of this stuff if it wasn't for law school. Yeah. So I don't look at it other than it was hell. It was living hell for 3 years. It didn't need to be. It shouldn't be. You look at the paper chase, and I heard something on a podcast the other day about that paper chase and how they teach you to be lawyers. Well, that's all horseshit as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't have real life in it. It's not. Yeah. And I would love to see us as a group, as a community, help that problem out. But regardless, we're going to end this episode. We ran a little bit long. We're going to continue with early signs you're on your way out in the next episode. And so stick with us here because we've got some other stuff about uncertainty, lack of enthusiasm, and how you can deal with this as a lawyer and see if you are really on your way out. Casey, any parting thoughts on this episode before we end?
I'm so happy to have everyone with us. I think you're totally right, Adam. And we got a lot more coming, particularly around this, the early signs on your way out. So please check out the next episodes. Looking forward to seeing you.
We'll see you guys next week. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.